Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, which means it is a moment of hope with upward transitions. We are so grateful this morning to have Jerod Shadid with the City of Oklahoma City. Jerod, tell us your official title.
Program planner for homeless services.
Very good. Jerod is the one that keeps us all informed about what's going on with the city and homelessness services. And so I'm just really glad that he is here to have a conversation with us. One of the main things that I wanted to chat with you about, Jerod, was sheltering. We get a lot of questions these days about what's going on with the city sheltering. Many of our constituents may or may not know that this time of year when it gets cold, we inform our clients of emergency sheltering. And what that typically looks like is a bunch of available beds get opened up so that our clients that are experiencing homelessness can take advantage of those. Well, COVID has definitely changed that. And so just tell us a little bit about what's happening with the city and homelessness services and particularly sheltering.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start with just kind of the way things have gone this year. I mean, as I was mentioning to you a little while ago, we started kind of ramping up for COVID the day after they canceled the Thunder game when we had a coalition meeting. And by that afternoon, was starting to get a game plan in place for how we were going to address any outbreaks in the shelter facilities and looking for locations where we could set up isolation facilities. Two locations were determined, like Grace Rescue Mission and City Rescue. Luckily, we didn't have those outbreaks that we were worried about early on. So one of those facilities was shut down, and City Rescue Mission was able to get theirs open, and now that's still open now. So when people have positive cases in their facilities, they can contact City Rescue and move them over to that isolation facility. All of our shelters that did put distancing protocols and other protocols in place to make sure their infection rates remained low. And it's worked really well. We haven't had any severe outbreaks. And I think of the count, when we look at our point in time count last year, I think it's remained about 3% of the population in our positivity rate. The problem is when you put those distancing protocols in place, as you mentioned, why we're having some problems this year is that it reduces the number of shelter beds you have, and it's cut them by about 40%. And that's just in our regular capacity, not our winter capacity. And as you were mentioning with the winter capacity, every year typically, we have a plan to where if the temperatures drop below 32 degrees and we spot that about 48 hours ahead of time, we send out a notice to a broad contact list, 211 posted on their website, put it through social media. Every way we can reach people. We print out posters that are put up in libraries and other locations. And then at 2 days later, those shelters provide extra beds. And those posters and all those notices have the number of beds at each location and which population they serve. Problem is, to do that, you have to get people, pack them in really close quarters. And with the pandemic, you can't do that. So that's really changed the game this year with the way we're going to have to do this. We've been looking for a winter shelter facility since the summer, and another facility that won't be located at one of our other existing shelters. It would be a location we'd have to lease for a short period of time. We knew that was going to be difficult. It's been a lot more difficult than we thought it was going to be. We've run through several locations. There's usually have problems with either the location that building is in and getting people there, or it looks good and then we start digging into it and start looking at maintenance and all this other stuff. The gas company will come over there and point out an issue that's actually going to require demolition or something, and then that kind of kills that deal. We did finally find a location that will be able to house about 150 people. I don't want to give the site yet.
Of course, yes.
But the landlord's been working well with us. And then after you find the location, we've had to deal with, an operator. It's a pretty big operation, and all of our people are largely at capacity. So it looks like we'll be partnering with Mental Health Association and the Homeless Alliance to provide those services. And this is the most moving pieces on anything I've worked on in quite a while, between the landlord, those two organizations, and then all the people you have to hire to come in there and fix the place up, security, everything else. There's just contracting stuff all over the place, and trying to keep up with it's been a real party. But it looks like most of those issues are settled. We've settled. And hopefully we'll have this off the ground before the end of the month. We should be able to get in there next week and start doing work on the place to make sure everything is in order to actually get people in there. There's still some staff that need to get hired, and we still have to get the security and everything else taken care of. But we should be able to hopefully do that for the next couple of weeks. And then by the time the really bad temperatures hit, which is usually January, February, we should be able to provide shelter for people. In the meantime, we did sort out an interim plan that doesn't provide as many beds, but it does provide quite a few beds for people in the meantime with Salvation Army and Homeless Alliance. It operates under the usual winter shelter protocols that will look 48 hours ahead of time and we'll send out a notice, but they will be providing about 75 beds in the day shelter at the Homeless Alliance. And then those will serve any population, men, women, children. And then at Salvation Army, they have about 24 beds in their large storm shelter for women and children. And so that right now is what we have until we can get the doors open on the other location.
Well, that's really encouraging to hear. I know it's one of the questions we get a lot, and with the unprecedented ice storm and now snow, it's one of the questions our clients have as well. So that's really exciting to hear that you're right on the cusp of opening that winter shelter.
Yeah, and it looks like I believe we're going to try to keep it open not just on the evenings, and we won't be sending that out just with a 48-hour notice. It will be open every night until April 1st. And possibly during the day as well, because we don't, just so people don't have to have a drop dead date and then walk out over to the Homeless Alliance. There's 150 people there, so it's a lot of people to move. Mm-hmm. So we think we're probably going to end up keeping it open during the day as well. That's
fantastic. So outside, 2020 has been that year. So outside of winter sheltering, so tell us what else has been going on with your work with the city, and particularly during COVID-19.
Well, the first thing we focused on was those respite facilities. Those largely got addressed, but also about the same time, CDC advised not to move camps around or start tearing down camps. So the city stopped doing that on public lands, and we retasked our outreach providers that were still on duty to just do an assigned geography, and they were basically just doing food drops and survival outreach out there just to try to keep people from moving around, because a lot of the food sites, the food service sites, had shut down at that period too. That worked for quite a while. We would also distribute COVID information on COVID-19 and PPE and things like that. But then once the food sites started opening back up, they started moving around a little bit more. So then the food sites, like the day shelter, had to start putting their protocols in place. They started letting some people in limited numbers at that point, but still weren't, operating like they were before. Most of the meals were being served in the parking lot. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I mean, the winter shelter has eaten up most times since a lot of times since the summer. It's been our primary concern, but then second to that has been evictions. I mean, we've
right, absolutely.
I mean, everybody knows that unemployment has gone through the roof since it started. Luckily, there was initially a moratorium on evictions by the county that was put in place, so that provided some relief. That expired, but then the CDC issued another moratorium. It is dependent on the tenant to actually notice that, to actually call that out, but it has been helpful. That expires come January 1st, though, and that's also when the CARES funds expire. We had worked with an organization that was set up with the city, a large allocation of the CARES Act dollars that were given to the city to help kind of design a program that we didn't operate, but they operate with some kind of assistance from us putting it together. Once that CDC moratorium went into place, though, we had already gotten our case managers with another separate source of funds. I know Upward Transitions is one of those organizations in place. And so those funds were largely for service purposes ineligible to use under the moratorium. So we just picked all of our case managers and retasked them to help those people with the CARES dollars so we can expand the capacity. That's worked out well, but the drop dead date is on January 1, the same day as the moratorium. So that's kind of a headache, obviously. We're hoping we get a break in the meantime, but if that doesn't happen, then that means our ESG funds, Emergency Solutions Grant funds, that Upward Transitions, Homeless Alliance, and a couple other providers use, that's going to be our primary source of funds to address those evictions come January 1st. We've been gearing up for that for about the past month. basically going back to what we were initially doing, thinking, not knowing that we were going to have a moratorium in place. So when someone comes into the system, we connect them with a housing provider and legal services right up front, so they're connected with both those outlets to avoid an eviction. So if they may be able to actually avoid it through legal assistance before they have to go to get housing funding assistance for housing or utilities. That looked like it was going to work last time. I think it'll probably work this time. We're just hoping, it's hard we don't have a crystal ball. It's hard to say what the numbers are going to look like. We're hoping for the best, but planning for the worst just because it's the smartest thing to do. And then if it doesn't happen, then we get a nice surprise.
Do you have any inclination on the statistics of how many people are on the verge of eviction?
Legal Aid gave us an estimate a little while back. They said approximately there could be about 20,000 people come January 1 who would possibly could have an eviction filed. Some of those people will find ways out. Some will just take the eviction, not go to court, and live with relatives. So exactly how many we're going to actually have to deal with, it's really hard to say. But again, you plan for the worst, so you plan for the 20,000, and just hope that that doesn't happen. But just to make sure we don't get taken off guard, you want to plan for that number.
Well, I know it's certainly one of the things that we have on our minds at Upward Transitions is we're definitely watching the moratoriums as they come in and as the conversations about extensions and all of those things happen, because it's definitely the second wave of this pandemic is the economic and employment impact and how it affects people.
Yes, it has been a concern with everybody. I mean, with everyone in our service area. I know Legal Aid. I've been talking to Greg pretty regularly. He's at the courthouse most days, and they're very worried about it. Again, we do have a larger allocation of our emergency solutions grant funds to address it. We have about close to $6 million. Part of that went towards the winter shelter facility, but only a small portion. So we do have a large source of funds. But when you break it down, say if you start looking at that 20,000, that's not. If you do actually have the 20,000, we will need another pot of assistance to help address that. We do have a few others, but primarily it will be that ESG assistance.
So I think lots of people don't know that there is a dedicated person and a dedicated program in the city, having these conversations and working on, solutions like this. So if you ran into the average person in Oklahoma City, what would you want them to know about the work that you're doing?
Well, I would make sure they know there's two of us, Stacy and myself.
Yes.
And the common misperception is that it's all handling grants and things like that. It's actually become a very small part of the job. I mean, all the federal funds come through our program. And we allocate them out, and we're responsible for overseeing them. But we also, as what they call the continuum of care, that's a designation by HUD. You're responsible for at least largely for coordination of services, or at least part of that. You're part of that machinery, and you're kind of near the top of it. There are two of us, so we're not the only ones. You work with your largest providers as well, like Homeless Alliance and Upward Transition, some others, but. I mean, we do coordinate services for, say, outreach. We don't fund any of the shelters. We try to help assist with coordinating shelter activities, as we are with the winter shelter right now. We are a big part of coordinating the winter shelter plan. And then I don't know. I would go, I guess, down the list of each one, depending on if they keep their eyes open and don't fall asleep while I'm telling them. But no, I mean. It's not uncommon for people to not know we're here. I just want to let them know that we are, and I want to let them know what we do. We've tried to get it out there a little bit more when people are concerned about it. So if we think that the city doesn't have anyone here, we try to put our name out there a little bit more, just through social media and other venues. But there's always going to be people who don't know, and then I just politely inform them that yes, there is somebody here, and I let them know roughly the broad details of what we do. And if they want to get in the nitty gritty, I tell them the whole thing.
So how would you characterize kind of the situation for those experiencing homelessness in Oklahoma City?
Well, right now, I mean, this year in particular, it's been bad. I mean, our numbers were up before COVID happened. Our total homeless numbers, but our unsheltered numbers were as well. Those have gone up with the shortage of shelter beds quite a bit. The ice storm, I mean, we were already struggling to get winter shelter on the ground and really worried about it. The ice storm really caused us to worry a lot more because we had those two facilities, our backup facilities open, and they had to put more people in there that was really safe to do distance. And then the power went out, and then everybody starts really, it really came home as to how bad this was. It's never a good time to be homeless. This is a particularly bad year to be homeless. I mean, there's just not a lot of outlets to go to get assistance. I mean, there's the same organizations, but there's not a lot of shelter, a lot of places where you can go to get warm. That's why we want to get this winter shelter open and maybe even extend it beyond that if we need to just to make up for that excess shelter space. I'm hoping next year, City Cares shelter will come online as well. That's going to be a low barrier facility that will provide some assistance for picking up that slack. But yeah, it's been a bad year, and just talking to people who have been on the street, we're all who aren't on the street already kind of done with it. They're all very, very, very much done with it.
Yeah. So the whole aim of these conversations that we've been having since June is hope. So where's the hope in this conversation, Jerod?
Well, it's going to end. I mean,
yes.
Really, yes. It will. And again, I want to point out that our positive rates have remained low.
Yes.
We have not had any severe outbreaks. We've managed to our people have really come together to address this situation very well. We also, we're not really I can't claim responsibility for this, but we are working with an organization of more epidemiologists that are from outside Oklahoma City that have worked and Healing Hands to put mass testing in place, put UV lights up in our shelter facilities. And a lot of that's been responsible for keeping those numbers low. We're going to get through this and we're going to get through it without having any severe outbreaks in the homeless population. And then we can get to, really start and then in the meantime, we can get to really addressing those unsheltered numbers, which we're trying to do with the winter facility in the first place. I'm still obviously worried. I'm more worried about the eviction. I am worried about the people living on the street right now because it seems like we've been able to really help address some of those issues. That's the hopeful part I have.
Yeah, and I will say, I was really worried that everybody would kind of pull in and hold their own, during this time, and that's not what I'm seeing. And I hope that's not what you're seeing either. We've had a lot of people, at least in our universe, kind of say, "What do you need? How can we help?" And so for those clients that we serve, experience homelessness and on the verge, that's been kind of the hope in this. Yes, this year has been bad, but there are people stepping up on their behalf to help intervene, and that's where I've found the glimmers of hope in 2020. So
yeah, we've had a lot of. That's right up front when we were starting to do outreach and other services that when people were needing food and we're having to take it out. The first couple of weeks, just because it was unexpected, Food Bank gave us 2 pallets of food. After that, we didn't really need it anymore because people were wanting to help. An insurance company up north had a kitchen they weren't using, so they just started making meals for us and delivering up for outreach. And they did that till a couple months ago. And several other providers did as well. I believe CSU Youth, they do a meal train, and they've not had trouble getting people on board. People have been very helpful. They want to help, and they've really stepped up.
Yeah, and I hope out of this comes an education too about the people that are in this experience and on the verge of experiencing homelessness too. So hopefully that will carry over into 2021 and beyond as we tackle bigger conversations about sheltering and evictions and all of those other things. So
yes, I agree.
Jerod, I really appreciate you being my last guest of 2020, and we will continue this work into 2021. Everyone, this has been a moment of hope with Upward Transitions. Have a wonderful rest of your 2020. and we will see you in 2021. Find a little hope in your day and have a great one. Bye.
Thank you.